So it's also not always about, oh, I must create games. I must make it fun. I think the first thing is see every opportunity as connection and engagement. And that includes all kind of in-person sessions. So that includes onboarding, learning, that includes like team buildings. And I think after all, the more we can connect with the learners or the employees or our team members, the more the content can goes into a person's mind or head. And in the other school, we believe that learning can only happen when you touch on head and heart.
Welcome, Min. Thank you for joining us for the My Working Title podcast, where we want to inspire and empower people to actively design their careers. So what I'll do is I'll do a quick intro of you, and of course, feel free to add in more stuff that you want to share to our audience who don't know you, right? So Min, you are the founder of the other school. As I know you, you are a very astute facilitator. You're really, really creative, and you're always coming on new ways of engaging people, and you have a very generous spirit. So I will leave the rest of the intro to you. Maybe you can tell us a little bit more about the other school, because that's already very interesting. And why do you start it?
Yeah, thank you so much, Jill, for inviting me to this podcast and share what we do. And to have a bit of chit-chat about learning as well, because that's how we got connected, all about bringing a really memorable learning experiences for people. So the name The Other School actually came about. One is that we were trying to rebrand. So we were called Illuminate back then. But when we tell people that, our company is called Illuminate, well, we started with Illuminate because we want it to be something that reminds people of learning. And we believe that knowledge and learning, it's really like a light that shows people the way to go. So we thought of Illuminate. But then more often than not, we always get this question that, Illuminati. So it's not something good. We eventually realize, okay, maybe this reminds people of something else rather than learning. That's why we try to look into the change. And when we were thinking about the change, so a backstory of Illuminate, or currently The Other School, is that we started because we were helping refugee learning centers to achieve self-sustainability. So in Malaysia, there are about 150,000 registered refugees, and these refugees in Malaysia, they come to Malaysia. Of course, the reason is that they want to seek refuge. That the country that they were from have put them into a situation that's dangerous, and even they may not be able to see whether they can live until tomorrow. So for a lot of them, especially for parents, for the kids, they will choose to flee from places like Afghanistan, Pakistan, Syria, Palestine. So we started to get in touch with this refugee learning center when we're students. So myself and my co-founder, her name is Kim. So we both were volunteering in different capacity for refugee learning center. And we realized that for refugee learning center, this is the only way the kids can learn. This is the only way the refugee kids can learn in Malaysia, because one, they're not allowed to join a public school. And second is that the parents are also not allowed to work. So in that case, they will not be able to afford private school. And for refugee learning center, the name, the general or like the official name, it's actually called ALC, Alternative Learning Center. And this ALC concept is being introduced to Malaysians for quite some time. However, for refugee learning center, they are very much on their own, or they would rely on volunteers. They would try to get fundings like donations here and there, to keep the school going. So because of this starting point of refugee learning center, alternative learning center, we thought, okay, perhaps we can do something with the word alternative, right? But calling it alternative school learning center, it's a mouthful of words, like alternative. So we thought, okay, what could be the synonym to alternative, then we thought, oh, the other. So basically that gives us the first inspiration of the name of the other school that really reminds us what we do, why we do this. But the business model part also come to a point where it require us to think, okay, so we want to be able to share learning to more young adults or people who are just entering the workforce for between 1 year to 5 years. And they need a different approach of learning. Why? Because of how they have been told education is like. And we realized that a lot of people, either they graduate, but they couldn't find a job, or they graduate, they found a job, they realize it's not what they want, or they realize it's not what they expected, and then they try to look into change very often. So, whereas on the other hand, when it comes to the employer side, we're also talking about, I have this bunch of graduate. Either one, it's really hard to hire. I can't seem to get anyone good, even though I've done many interviews. Or two, even I've hired them, it seems like they really are not up to par. Right, so there is this both sides of scenes or scenarios that's happening, that we're hearing a lot, and that's when we start to look into, okay, if we are the alternative school for people who, by right should have graduated school, by right should have done with school, what else can we really share? What else can we share so that people can learn differently and learn in joy and learn meaningfully, learn so that it can help them professionally. So that's how the name of the other school come about. Basically, why we start and the approach that we choose when it comes to offering our learning solutions.
Yeah, so thanks so much for sharing, Amin. I think that is very interesting. There is the other school for the other types of people, right? So it's an alternative to an alternative audience. So I think that's very beautiful when you say you want them to learn in joy, creating memorable learning experiences. So just curious, right? I mean, like, why is engagement so important for Gen Zs? And how has this new approach or this alternative approach or other approach has helped you engage the Gen Zs and also engage the corporations? Because you literally shared two different problem statements, right, that they have. So how have you seen that using these methods have changed things?
Yeah. So this is coming more of the learning solutions that we offer to companies, to SMEs, and to even startups. So why is engagement so important? I believe it's part of the way that they grow up with. So they get into, they have devices on their hands all the time, or almost all the time, right? And that include at home, at work, just any point of time. It's so accessible when it comes to knowledge and learning information. It's really one Google away, like literally one ChatGPT away, basically. So because of that, the engagement is it's gonna be the real differentiation on how much really goes into them. Because looking at it or like listening, it's almost just them seeing it or acknowledging it, but the attention is something that we see have been quite challenging in the past. However, our personal belief or something that we try to often remind ourselves is that the people that we trying to share this learning with, the employees, our learners, they don't owe us their attention. Even though they are placed in a learning session, doesn't mean that automatically we can just do whatever we want, right? I think nowadays in any kind of L&D learning session, there's no authority per se and say, you know what, I'm a trainer, you have to listen to me. And you wouldn't get that anymore. The good part of that is that it means it really push trainers, facilitators, people who are trying to share knowledge to look into their craft, what they're trying to share, right? But of course, the downside of that is a lot more focus has to go into how do I create touching points for engagement? How do I create moments that will truly help people to learn, rather than just transferring knowledge? Because without the engagement, essentially it's just doing the transfer, which we know that it's not going to stick. But we want the learning, we want the knowledge to be able to stick to their mind, ultimately. Is why that makes the engagement part that is so, so important in any kind of learning session.
Yeah, that's nice. This is also really like the whole, in some sense, creating the dopamine hits, right? So you're playing game and then like you're designing the game, you're designing the training session, and like, okay, where are the dopamine hits that you can have?
Yeah.
So that's something we see. I agree with you that we have to, in a sense, earn their attention. Like in the past, it's like you are coming for this workshop, so you
Yeah.
will, like Chinese say, guai guai, like very, very like or very, very like obediently go for the session. But I think now it's not the case, right?
Yeah.
So beyond training sessions where you really design an experience, right? How about say just day-to-day things like when managers have to, engage Gen Zs in meetings, right? Like or onboarding, or you don't want to be deaf by PowerPoint and things like that. Like and also the tricky bit is like folks like us, or maybe not you, maybe me, we have been trained or by train or by our previous managers. Typically it's like, don't ask so much question, just suck it up, just do it, you'll be okay. But then now we're like, oops, we have to deal with this whole entire bunch of generation who just, nope, I don't want to do this,
Yeah.
I want work-life balance. So like how do we learn and unlearn, and how do we manage? Yeah.
Yeah, that's quite a big chunk there. But I think we can look at it from two angles. So the first you mentioned about engagement. Other than training session, what could happen, right? So it's also not always about, oh, I must create games. I must make it fun. I think the first thing is see every opportunity as connection and engagement. And that includes all kind of in-person session. So that includes onboarding, learning, that includes like team buildings. And I think after all, the more we can connect with the learners or the employees or our team members, the more the content can goes into a person's mind or head. And in the other school, we believe that learning can only happen when you touch on head and heart. I know that in the past, we mentioned that feelings has no place at work. So all the feelings that you carry, before you step into the workplace and office, you should just leave it outside, right? But I think it has come to a time where we realize that actually sometimes people also have comments like, oh, hey, your work no hard one. How come? You try do this, no hard. So that means that a lot of this work really can show that how much a person care about the outcome, the mission, the vision of the company. And once people start caring, there's a lot of this teaching people how to do, or like sharing on people step by step. So those part can usually be saved. And once people start caring about the outcome, and people will get proactive on their own. At least that's what we realize. Really engaging with people. And it's about how to remind or how to try to bring people on the mission that company has, and to remind people that, hey, if this is what you want to do and this is what you want to join, and then let's put the best work out. I think people misunderstand that sometimes Gen Z, or like most of the Gen Z, they don't want to put their best work out. But that's not true, because different generations, everyone wants to really do their best work and be their best self. But I have to say, Gen Z is really more rebellious. So that's like, oh, I don't like this. Okay, I'm going to go and work at somewhere else. And why? Again, it comes back to the accessibility of knowledge, information, and opportunities. They see that they also went through pandemic time, where work that used to look secure and certain now could potentially be a place where, oh, actually, I don't know. I'm not sure if, full-time job in big companies, we're talking about big names, like Google, TikTok, and all those, you can still get laid off if something like pandemic happens.
Yeah.
So the concept of, okay, full-time job, certainty, is so different than any other generations before Gen Z. So that's something that I learned a lot. And even myself, so I don't think I'm considered as a Gen Z, not that young. But when I take interns or when we take part-timers or now we start to look into full-time, I have to admit that I have to put more effort in engagement. It's no longer just, okay, this is the job scope, this is the work, go and do it. And I think one of the reasons, this is also what I heard from a podcast, that success factor has to touch on this elements: the physical, the mental, the spiritual, environmental. So physical, mental, it's something that's quite known, right? Healthy body and healthy mind. So a lot of like wellness in mind has also started in workplace. But spiritual, people think that, spiritual is about religion. But I would say that spiritual is really about meaning. So most of the time, people have a religion or like they practice certain religion. It's almost like looking for meaning that they want to have in life, right? Same goes to workplace, right? So workplace meaning, it's equal to the healthy level of the spiritual element. And a lot of the new generations are trying to be sure or be certain that what they're doing is something that's actually meaningful for themselves and also for the bigger environment. And so these four factors there is something that I try to also check on with my team and see, okay, are we good at all these four elements? And with that, what to do is then become something that's much more easier to communicate. Because of this how and why got settled, got sorted, and then the what part eventually becomes something that's more flexible. And why I need this flexibility, because we're just starting out. There's a lot of things that a year ago were like this, but then a year after we change the way that we do things, what we want to do. So we need this flexibility in place. But first and foremost, we have to be very firm on or like align on the how and why.
Yeah, that's brilliant. So I just wanted to also zoom in a little bit. You mentioned physical, mental, spiritual, and environment. Could you unpack environment a little bit too?
Yeah, so environment would be the social part, who are the people that I work with. Knowing that the people that I work with are people that I can really be in a team, act as a teammate, and I can rely on, and also share the same mission that we're working towards. So that's what I meant by environmental. And of course, also, I would see if it's a physical place, that also play a big role, of course, for a lot of people. But even if it's a remote environment, right, it's still a lot of this structure, a lot of this platform. How do we make it easy for people to get their work done when it comes to the overall structure and overall environment? So that's what I meant by more on the, I wouldn't say the people part, but the non-people part, the place itself. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah, so thanks for sharing quite a lot of things already, right? So it looks like you are on your own, in your own company. You're also practicing certain, practices to really align physical, mental, spiritual, and environmental. And at the same time, you also get invited, right, and by big companies like Lazada, Nestle, to really do stuff with them, right? So how do you take this approach and design something? Do you have any highlights or any stories that you can share of how you worked with them and how it has been successful?
Yeah. I think it's so important I think in our case, a lot of people would consider us as like vendor, right? A vendor of a company or supplier of learning per se. So I think first and foremost, I try to help my client to understand, okay, this is in the past, this is a vendor relationship. But now we're really trying to co-create something. And ultimately, that thing is what I wish could be helpful for you as a company. So alignment on that is very important. So that's number one. Number two is that when we design, it is also whenever there are opportunities, whenever the company allow, or let's say, especially like if it's something regarding to, let's say, retail. So if we talk about customer service in a retail environment, so I will ask company, can I join one meeting of yours? Can I visit the store before I even design anything? Just to be able to really understand what is the now and how to better close the gap between now and an ideal future that the HR team, the L&D team, or the boss would like to achieve. So that's number two. Number three is that in all our learning sessions that we do, we always emphasize that, okay, we're not just here to listen and do later or like process later. We want immediate process. We want to see productive struggle from everyone who's in the learning session. We want to get like raw thoughts and feelings from what you're hearing and what you're seeing. And then we are trying to get immediate feedback and say, oh, is it helpful? Is it something applicable? That's what we always try to do. And we invite the HR or L&D team whenever possible. They also join the session so that they can really see what's the voice from people who are actually learning what we have designed. So that's kind of like a go-to process whenever possible, unless if it's something that they're like, oh, it's so urgent, we really need to get this done. Even that, we just want to understand why is it so urgent. Is that something that a training or a learning can solve for them? Because very, very high chance that if it's something urgent, it may not be a training challenge. It may not be a training need. There could be something else. So we try to really understand what's the problem, and then only we move into the solution part.
Yeah, thanks so much for sharing. I think pretty much similar to us here at my working title too. We also talk about co-creating, collaborating. And for design, I think we usually like to have at least a few interviews or a few phone calls with the key stakeholders, or at least people who are attending on the ground, so we know what's the issue. If not, it's like, I don't know what I'm solving. I don't know what's the pulse on the ground. Totally agree. I super love what you mentioned about the word productive struggle. Right? It sounds like, it's very experiential, very real time, like you said. Can you unpack that for us for a bit more? Like, what do you mean by productive struggle, and how do you navigate that tensions and that creating that safety for people to even share, right?
Yeah. It's not always smooth and easy, I have to say, which is why sometimes the observation actually help a little bit in building the relationship. So when I get to observe, I get to start talking to them a little bit. Oh, you know what, I'm here because next month or like 2 months later, there is something that I'm going to do. So that when they see me, it's a bit of by design. When they see me, they know that, oh, okay, this is this plan. I've seen this person before. So that's one. And secondly, productive struggle is something that I personally benefit a lot from. So, because I think what we realize, or at least what I understand, right? The issue, should I use the word issue? The issue of education system is it's not getting enough real-time feedback. You learn 3 years and you go through an exam and get whatever CGPA that you're getting, and then only you work, right? So, but in the most ideal situation, which I've seen, or some other, I think nowadays there are a lot more university that trying to do things differently, or private school that trying to do things differently. So it's like really like learn and do and learn and do. So this learn do will really put people into a mode of, okay, I'm productive in a way where I learn something and then I get to apply. And we know that that's going to be struggle for sure, because very high chance that you are only learning 10% and then you immediately do it. And then you realize, oh, actually, I need the rest of the 90%. That's possibility number one. You realize you need the rest of 90%. Possibility number two is that you realize, oh, this is not for me. And maybe not for me now. Doesn't mean that not for me like forever. But it's okay. That means that it still help people to put into context. Okay, I'm learning this. I start to think, how do I apply it already? So I think the productive struggle part is something that we hope that people can not just adopt during the learning session that we design. Hopefully, it really become a habit, a practice that can be done more and more often. And we try to encourage everyone to really take this into their daily work as well, so that when they start picking up a new knowledge in their head, they already start connecting the dots. Okay, how does the application look like in my role? How does application look like at my current department? So with productive struggle, what we're hoping for is not just something that they practice during the learning session, but becomes what they can carry with them on the daily basis as well. And why is this important is because we often hear people to say, trust the process, right? Which is something great, especially for a lot of trainers or facilitators. Sometimes we really want to invite people to give a chance to hear out or to try to see if this is something that's going to be helpful. However, I also think that productive struggle is helping people to connect the dots faster and better. So when there's a certain, let's say, new framework, new idea, new knowledge that's being shared, immediately in the head, it goes, okay, how does it look like in my context, in my role, in my department? Is it even relevant? So these are the questions that we invite people to think on the spot, especially when they start to have some form of practice that they can do, either a role play, discussion. Yeah, so we also try to do a follow-up session if possible, so that after 1 month and we can start speaking to people who see some potential in it, and we help them to move faster or easier. So that's more on productive struggle and why it's so important for us. And we try to emphasize that to the people who are learning on the ground and also the HR team.
Yeah, nice. So I like how you unpack that, and also it's very hyper personalized and it's very real time. So it is also what I don't think it's just necessarily Gen Zs. Obviously they grew up with that a bit more. But I think even folks like us, we are just like, okay, tell me how I can apply it. If it's not, relevant, I don't waste my time, right? So I think you really hit the nail on the head. So it looks like a lot of clients come to you for all kinds of things, right? So I know you do a lot of team interaction, career development. Maybe you can share with us a little bit what do clients come to you for, and you've used this approach, but what kind of things that clients come to you for, and how has it translated for them?
So definitely the games is a main reason. So we do get quite a bit of team building. But even if it's with team building, we try to ask, okay, what do you want out of the team building? Obviously, teamwork is one of the most commonly answered, and then we're like, no, we ban the answer. We don't say that to clients. But we will tell them, okay, what is it about the team that you really want it differently? Is it about accountability between each other? Is it a specific area, let's say customer service, empathy, things like that? So understanding the theme, that's one when it comes to team building. And secondly, we do get quite a bit of first-time manager leadership skill. So I believe one of the reason is, of course, the audience experience, the audience age group is one big factor. These are people who are new and also skilled enough to become a manager, but at the same time, they have a lot of the personal development area to look into. So first time leadership skill is one area. And the third would be, these days, I think we are having quite a bit of empathy, and diversity. So that covers all audience include, customer facing, within the team itself, or it could be they work with partners outside to developing a better relationship with, let's say, their vendor, like their partners. So that development of relationship and to improve the diversity part, that's what we're getting quite a bit the second half of the year. But yeah, ultimately I would say three things: team building, engagement, that focus in really in-person engagement. And second is the leadership skills, early stage manager leadership skill. And last is a bit more on diversity and empathy exercise, but for all different groups of audience.
Yeah, nice. So you get actually quite a spectrum, and it's really very much the engagement piece, right? So a lot of it is really figuring out how to get people to be engaged, talk to each other, and also with the flavor of the month or flavor of the year of what corporates need at this moment. Yeah. So I recall that earlier on, as we spoke about using different games and different aspects of career development, I think part of it that you also do quite some of the things around team engagement, but with also using the vehicle of career development. And then you mentioned this line that I thought was really, really good, like self-discovery is the beginning point of career development. So I thought, would you be able to help unpack that for our audience?
Yeah. I think it's almost like, when you need to want to go into dating or like having a relationship, but you gotta start from understanding what you want, and also what you can offer or what you can put on the table, right? So that you can communicate that to companies or interviewer, things like that. So it even starts from the process of like interview, which almost every job requires that, basically, right? Because then the interviewer will start asking, recruiter will start asking you, tell me more about yourself. Like, what do you think is a strength? What do you think is a weakness? Even the first touch point, it's already on how much do you know yourself? And if you know yourself, please help me to understand you. So that I know if we are a good fit. So you start from there, right? And then without this piece of understanding or self-awareness, it's usually hard to first get a job, because then most likely we assess it by interview. Secondly is that even if you get one, that's where you realize, it's not exactly what I expected, which I hear quite often from the younger generations. Like, it's not quite what I expected, things like that. And I think being aware of yourself, it's so important, even more important for a leader. So I have seen this practice, I don't know if you've seen that before, but it's almost like a guide to say how to work with someone. So that, like, me as a leader, I will do a guide for people to know how to work with me. So that working document itself includes like, how do I communicate? What do I prefer when there is a chunk of information? What do I prefer? What's a way that I prefer to give feedback, receive feedback? And when there's conflict, what's my go-to way to resolve, right? And I love that so much. So last time when I was a full-timer in the company, so I tried to tell my boss, this is so good, please make everyone do this. Not exactly everyone, but the leadership, I feel, even need this more, right? And including now myself, I also do that. For people who will work with me for a longer time, for a longer term. So that piece, and now I think back, why I think that's so valuable, I think it's because one, it really helped people to get to know you faster, but that comes with a condition that I actually know myself first. Because the more we know, the more we can communicate, the more we will be able to just focus in what needs to get done, rather than, this is your style, this is my style. Now, once I know it, it's a bit like cheat sheet lah. You kind of get a fast track card in order to know a person. Like, here's just what about me. Of course, I don't want to. I think the downside of a lot of the self-awareness, be it like this kind of document or a personality test or assessment, things like that. I think the downside is people use that as a way to say, this is who I am. And you have to follow no matter what, right? And this is how I do things. So that's the downside if it's not being handled well, I think. To just say, it's just me, right? But the good side of that is then, okay, this is the current me. I do have a future ideal version, working towards that. But at the moment, since we're working together, let's look into how we can ease the process. So that we save time in recognizing the best way, but we put more time into what needs to get done, which is the work itself.
Yeah, nice. So it's almost I think what people call it is the personal operating manual, right? So
Yeah.
it's like it's like if I buy this device, then this is what I'm gonna get, and this how operates, right? They call it the personal operating manual. Yeah, I love that too.
Yeah.
I have a document around on that. And also I think that also requires I think what is different now from a manager now and versus maybe like 10, 20 years ago or whatever, that you requires even as a leader and a manager to have some form of inner work, right? Inner awareness and really being very clear about who you are, what are your trigger points or activated points, what are the areas, some are preferences, like how I want information to come, but also some is also, okay, these are some of my points I'm working on. So like we were speaking with different people and I say, hey, I'm working on being less of an Asian parent in being a manager, right? So you are aware of, different things that you can come across. But I think like a lot of like the inner work about clarifying your values, communicating your values, sharing your values, why is it important is really, really key. Yeah, so thanks for sharing that. I just wanted to also zoom in a little bit more on the self-discovery because I think like what you shared is really good around not just being pigeonholed, but at the same time knowing more of yourself. And I recall you sharing an experience using games or different aspects that from just I learned this about myself, I can apply this to my career immediately. So could you just share the example again so that our audience will be able to get that? And what are some of the insights you've got when you facilitated that for people? Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely there are two areas to look into, right? The first is a game like Career Super Drive. One of the reasons that I really like it a lot and to constantly try to invite people to experience and try to invite company to also do this as a company-wide experience. One of the big reason is that it's designed to help people to discover, but with lesser pressure in a way, because it comes in the form of game and it helps people to kind of relax their mind a little bit around okay, it's a game, right? I can be myself. So that's the first. The game itself, it's already on self-discovery. A lot of these questions, a lot of this understanding how do you make decision, how do you practice. So this will move to the second area, which is, I think I personally feel that a lot of people have this, people say inner child, that you just like to play. But of course, on different things. That's why people enjoy hobbies, I think, to a certain extent, right? You have different hobbies. But putting people in the mood of, okay, I'm in a game environment. I'm playing a game. And this then requires probably like an external facilitator to really observe and see, oh, okay, I notice this is how you make decision in the game. I notice this is how you talk to other people in the game. I notice this when there is a moment that require you to make choices or like use limited resources. So all these things then will help people to, I think it's more of giving people a space to allow the facilitator or observer to share back what they have observed which this is the part where require a really skilled facilitator to do that. And these things may not come up when it's at work. So that's number one. One reason is that maybe their role don't need them to make decision a lot. Or like the nature is very different. Or like they are very much on, okay, it's a work mode. In work mode, I act this way. But what I think a lot of people don't realize is that maybe in the work setting, things are good and so-called like peaceful or like safe. So that's all right. But what we want to find out more, or something that's more closer to real personality, real character, happens when there are high emotions. And this is like high pressure, high stake. So we're trying to curate or simulate this mini pressured environment and see how people act in it. That's why I think game are able to do that. And of course, provided it's a game that people know and can play lah. So because there are some games who take forever to just explain the rules. People find it really hard to get into it. So that's like putting that aside, right? Games have the ability to create or simulate that environment so that we can see, okay, potentially this is how the person will act like when it's like emotionally charged. And that's where we can really discover more about these moments that may not come up or may have not been shown yet. So because I think it's easy when things are good, or like when things are structured, organized. That's what we see as easy, right? But usually the harder time, or what we realize, okay, how come you are different than what I thought? It's when there's different stresses coming in. So we're trying to get to that through the games, and hopefully through the games, that's where we can share the feedback, and it allows people to think, okay, it sounds like I really did that. I really said that. Or like I really acted that way. What could it be? Like you say, it's actually looking inwards a lot. But we're also quite careful on that. Because at the end of the day, honestly, when we're not psychologists, I feel like that goes into a bit more psychology, how a person's mind works. But yeah, I think through games, we hope to be able to get more of that and help people to discover more about themselves. Then okay, strength, with hobbies, which is things that you may started knowing since young, but we want to go deeper on that.
Yeah, thanks for sharing. So it's a little bit more of like a simulated environment where you also get third-party observation. So I think that's the value in that. So thanks Min for sharing that, like the whole getting them to be able to share in different types of environments, whether they are in peacetime or a bit more pressured environments. So just maybe you can will you be able to share like something very tangible or concrete to our audience? So for example, what were some of the things that you have observed that people have shared that they discovered themselves and they could help directly in their career development?
Yeah, for sure. I think it's important to also remember and recognize that, yes, after games you learn a lot. Like the knowing part shouldn't be the end point. The end point should be after they actually take this to experiment or practice. And I know that in my working title and Career Superdrive, it's really big on that as well. Right? You take the insights and turn it into small experiments. So let's take an example, right? So if it's a game about, okay, you have a limited resources and you need to build something. So that's where we see, or let's say I'm a third party or like a facilitator, and then during the debrief, that's where I'll share, okay, I noticed that you're someone who are a bit more reserved. When people start to look at ideas, you wait for the moment or the opportunity to give feedback or to talk about something. And whereas for you, I noticed that you are really quick to action. So anything that you can think of immediately, you will start to do it. And I realized among you all, let's say X, then you are the mediator, and you are trying to make sure everyone is get heard. The idea is taken into consideration. So what do you think about what I just said? All right, so that's a typical debrief practice that we do. And then after that is when we invite people to think, okay, so I briefly talk about everyone's communication style and decision-making style, which I think a lot of the day-to-day of people's work, no matter what role, what department, communication, it happens very, very often. Like no matter what, you need to be able to talk and like not talk bullshit, but like talk something that's really helpful. So that they try to see and hear, okay, so this is the observation. Is it true? Is it not true? And if it's true, how is it really something that I want? So that's usually the first thinking point. Is it something that I want? And then eventually, if it's not something that I want, what can I do to be closer to what I want? So this is what we meant by, okay, you have insights from the game. How do you then convert into something that is on daily practice for you? And this would need quite a bit of unpacking process and also time for sure, and also a bit personal as well. So this usually can be done if it's with smaller group, but with bigger group, that's where we will keep it more structured. Okay, decision-making style, 3 styles. Communication style, 3 styles. Which one do you think you are? And the pros and cons of each style. And also how can you then look into the cons of that specific style? So that's a more general way to share what we do with the insight and how do we really move people from knowing into actions at the workplace.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. So I think in just synthesizing and summarizing what you shared this whole hour, it's really like you created the other school for a alternative experience for alternative audience. And it's really having area or looking out for opportunities for connection and engagement. And in that moment, you are creating what I love, this real-time productive struggle where they are processing their insights and translating that to actions. So that's what I gotten out of the conversation and it's really, really precious and really important and such a important skill and important mindset to have moving forward. So I just wanted to finish this off and just say, do you have any last words or anything that's burning you want to share for our audience before we wrap this up?
So, of course, first, thank you so much. You make that really nice summary. And so one fun fact is the real-time productive struggle is what I picked up from how the kids in Refugee Learning Center learn. So because of what we see and because of what we get to try and practice, and that allows us to also keep thinking, okay, what can be done differently in the corporate learning world as well. So sometimes people ask, oh, it's like, what's a link? What's ultimately related here, right? Like that's kids refugee learning center, and then there's the corporate learning. But I think seeing how kids learn at the most non-polished, at the most natural way has helped us to get a lot of new ideas on, okay, maybe this is what we could try for adults as well, because ultimately the engagement part, the part that make people think, the part that make people slowly get to know themselves better, it's all the same because we're all humans, although it's different age, right? So that's really something that we realize, and it's very, very important for us. And lastly, I really hope everyone love and enjoy the current version of self and have the faith and the confidence that you can be closer to where you want to be through learning and through absorbing and through discovering. So that's all I have.
Wow, thank you. So I definitely agree with you, and that's we all can aim to be 1% better, hopefully happier and all that, but just also be contented. So thank you so much, Min, for being with us. So looking forward to see more cool stuff that you're doing and looking forward to see you in KL again.
Thank you so much.